In the market today, smaller merchants don't necessarily have the visibility of the 12, 24 months, and 3-year plans that some of the larger merchants do. They end up being slightly more reactive with their financial requirements. So within that small to the mid-sized market, we're able to respond to their needs a lot faster than a bank, a lot faster than even some of the larger alternative funding institutions, so that we can respond to that opportunity that requires funds that helps them advance their business today.
Hi, I'm Chris Earhart with Smarter Loans. I'm here with Jodi Levy, Head of Canada for BizFund Canada. And today we're talking about merchant cash advances. Jodi, thanks so much for being here with me.
Pleasure. Thank you for making the time to meet with me.
Awesome. So I want to know today, for folks who don't know, what is a merchant cash advance?
Great question. And we get asked it all the time. So merchant cash advance is basically, we're looking at, for starters, it's an alternate form of business funding. And what we do is look at merchants' existing revenues and essentially advance them their future revenues today at a cost. Both the revenues that they're eligible for and the cost associated with that capital are kind of deconstructed in the bank statements based on, various criteria from the industry they're in, the number of deposits, the frequency of deposits, the performance regarding NSFs, other MCAs they may be taking or not taking, and so forth. And that's really what we're doing. So we're advancing merchants their future revenues today to cost so that they can monetize those monies today.
Definitely. So how do you think a potential customer should decide whether they're ready to take on that sort of financing from you?
That's also a good question. I mean, the reality is what we continue to find, if I may, in the market today, is that smaller merchants don't necessarily have the visibility of the 12, 24 months, and 3-year plans that some of the larger mid-sized merchants do, which automatically puts them in a different position because they end up being slightly more reactive with their financial requirements versus having the luxury of being able to be proactive. So within that small, ebbing into the mid-sized market, we're able to respond to their needs a lot faster than a bank, a lot faster than even some of the larger alternative funding institutions, so that we can respond to that opportunity that requires funds that helps them advance their business today.
Now, talk about communication and the expectation of the customer. I understand that what you're finding is people really want their money fast.
Speed is certainly the name of the game. And again, kind of talking to the nature of the smaller merchant, their opportunities may come up more organically. So they don't necessarily have the revenue set aside. And those organic opportunities are massive for a small merchant. And to be given the opportunity to be able to leverage those quickly so that they can grow their business is vital. It's part of their growth strategy.
I understand. And once you have a sort of a customer applying, could you speak to common mistakes you're seeing, things they should avoid, things they should know about when applying?
The reality is the more accurate the information you provide, the better. I mean, the truth of the matter is we see these merchants, they're working hard, they don't have a ton of free time. And when they start to make their applications, they're fraught with mistakes and we don't necessarily get the accurate information. What are they currently looking for? Why? Some of the stuff above and beyond the bank that's going to allow us to really customize the offer to meet their needs rather than just kind of plug and play. So more information is always better. Accurate information is better. And trying to make sure they speak to somebody and they're not just pressing enter on the internet so that their needs get kind of fired across every funder and broker in Canada. The minute any funder starts seeing a merchant's bank statements and application from multiple brokers, the story is clear. These are people that are typically way more desperate, which brings their risk profile for us up. It doesn't necessarily take them off the table at all, but it certainly means that their risk profile appears to be high because they're desperately seeking funds. So the way they tell that story, even when they are going on desperate, really becomes important.
I see. And I mean, that seems like low-hanging fruit for someone in their position to just keep that in mind.
Yes, it is. And sometimes people omit the low-hanging fruit or the obvious stuff because they think it's irrelevant. And I'm telling you, it is relevant.
Mm-hmm.
But it does help drive a more accurate response to your application.
I see. So what do merchants coming to you, what are their baseline needs to qualify?
We require that merchants are in business for 12 months, for starters. We require that they're generating revenues of over 15, 20K is really our preference. But we sometimes see at 15K gross monthly revenues, when there's some consistency, that there might be a window of opportunity, depending on the opportunity they're seeking. Is it a revenue generating opportunity that's going to help accelerate business, or is it something that just keeps the lights on? Credit scores, different from the bank. We don't use credit score in the same way the bank does. We don't weight it quite as heavy. It's relevant, but it's not our top point. You want to be, again, as transparent as possible. We're going to find out whatever we're going to find out. The more information we have at the beginning, the more successful we can, in fact, share your file information and provide you with something that's valuable. So if your credit score is below 500, you want to let your people know in advance. You don't want to waste your time. You don't want to waste anyone's time. So that level of transparency, we're really looking at a minimum 500 and up, to answer your question. And we do realize that humans, listen, people have varying stories. People make mistakes, and we want to see where we can to help rebuild that. That's part of the mission.
Do you have any recommendations for sort of maybe businesses that are in their early stages, or that even what you were talking about, those people who are right on the threshold of what you want to see, the 4 months of 15,000 in gross revenue, when they're looking for funding, what sorts of things do you want them to know, whether they're coming to you or anyone else, just because they're smaller and don't have the track record of others?
Part of it is really building what they've got in order to be eligible for funding. And I believe that's what you're asking. So, some businesses, as they're growing, they're taking more cash and less putting in the bank statements. We are always looking at what's in your bank statements. So recognizing that as you're building that business, you want to make sure you're making those deposits and that you're getting that cash in there, because that's where we're going to be initially looking, and that you're doing your best to also build your credit. You want to make sure you're performing. In other words, you don't want to be submitting bank statements that are full of NSFs. You want to grow slow and steady. You want to grow within your means, because the minute you don't, cash flow becomes an issue.
I see. Now, the question I had for you earlier, we talked about, if you could develop for me, what's like your average customer profile? Like, is there a specific industry you're seeing more applicants from, or is it all across the board? Like, who is this product best suited for?
The product is best suited for, there is not one industry for which this industry is best suited for. We typically find that it's best suited for a size more than an industry in particular, which is why those minimum revenues. But our standard merchant, when you say, is probably about a 50K, plus or minus average monthly revenues. They've been in business for at least a year, likely even sometimes a little more. Their credit scores are probably in and around 550, and they're looking to expand.
I see.
So we find most of our business, on average, our average deal is about $40,000. That's typically where the business sort of starts and launches.
Can you speak to me about, you were talking earlier about speed and the expectation of speed from the customer. So from start to finish, how quickly can this be completed?
Ideally 24 hours. I mean, we oftentimes will be getting an application in the morning and funding in the afternoon. That's ideal, but you can assume 24, max 36 hours. And that assumes that we are communicating that the information that you're sharing is accurate and timely, in which case it's a two-way street.
Sure. I imagine the emphasis is, if that information is provided up front and it is complete and it is what you expect, then you can be more on the shorter end of that range.
That's absolutely not often that we all come to the table with everything, all our I's dotted and T's crossed. And I think, if anything, that typically can be the place where both sides may fall down. Because
I see.
So that's why the high communication and making sure that we're getting those documents as fast as possible.
Right. Now that you've painted this picture, like you could really paint a story here, some sort of merchant sort of in your range and profile of what you expect. They just need a piece of capital or something, like they need it that week, and they can go in that week if they have their information ready and contact you and then get going on acquiring whatever it is they've outlined. Right.
Absolutely. If you have, let's say, a merchant, maybe they're in the retail business and they sell furniture, accessories, and so on, just to throw one example, and they've got a container that they need to pick up, and they don't necessarily have the funds required, and it's a container that maybe it's on sale, and all those kinds of
Right.
opportunities that they know as soon as they get that container, they're going to be able to sell it and generate revenues. That's a perfect example.
Right.
But I think one of the questions, if I can answer it, in
Sure.
terms of mistakes merchants make,
Mhm.
and I think that's something I really do want to circle back, because I do have some good advice for that.
Of
And
course.
we're always looking for, as I mentioned, the complete application, including what you're looking for, reason for the funds. But when we're looking at bank statements, even more so than the credit score, which, as I said, is 500 plus or minus, we are really looking for that performance. We're not looking for, your whole month in negative days, negative weeks, negative
Mhm.
months. That becomes a bit onerous. And if you have overdraft, we want to make sure we know that once you're in the negatives. It's just, we want you to be proactive in sharing that information. And when we have questions about that, that you're able to reply quickly so that we can get past it. Because if you have a quick need, we might have a quick question to qualify. We want to keep that momentum rolling forward for you. So again, the speed in which you get back to us with questions, I think really does determine the quality that you're going to get from us too.
For sure. Can you speak to me about sort of what you've observed in the Canadian marketplace so far? Because it sounds as though there's still opportunities for you and others that other players, for whatever reason, just haven't been able to satisfy those needs yet.
There's a couple of reasons. For one, the small mid-sized merchant market continues to grow. We found another surge post-COVID. So the demand is going up. And there are not a ton of players in the market in Canada. It's not quite as saturated as in the US. So bringing in a new funder like myself certainly provides the merchant market a great opportunity, and us with a great opportunity, taking our many 10 plus years of expertise working globally and those assets, those revenues, to really help build out a product in Canada that will make a difference and will kind of service the market in ways that it has not yet been. And there's
Mhm.
certainly lots of opportunities
I
to
see.
get that business. So
Right. Can I ask you, and you don't have to be completely specific, but what sort of is the rate a customer can expect to pay on this?
I think when we spoke about that earlier, the cost to the merchant does vary
Mhm.
depending on the risk that their portfolio, industry, bank, etc. presents. Our cost can be probably anywhere from 20% to probably as high as 40 and change, right?
Mhm.
Really is going to depend on the risk and of that portfolio.
I see. Now, can you speak to business owners about, you talked about that scenario where, there's an opportunity presents itself and they need funding to secure that opportunity quickly. Are there other scenarios that you can envision for the sort of customers that you want to see come to you beyond that sort of like instant need for a capital?
Absolutely. I mean, and there's certainly that's one part of the customer base that we deal with. We certainly have a lot of customers that have, that are slightly more seasonal or have slightly more visibility to plan ahead. And they know, I'm dealing with all kinds of markets that maybe in the spring is their big time. They need to get ahead of that. They've got to get their inventory for whatever that is now. So that's somebody who's definitely planning, right? They can see year over year where their needs are and they can anticipate those needs, whatever their cash problem is. Again, it doesn't necessarily have to be inventory. It could be at a certain time of year for whatever the business. There's tons of licensing renewals where their
Mhm.
costs are incredibly heavy that will now start to eat at their cash flow. That's another place where they have some visibility and will be able to plan for it.
Right.
So we are always open to making sure that we can secure that for you, right? And help you plan. That's a big piece. So when we look at merchants and their needs, we're not just looking at what are your capital needs today, but where is your capital pain? And let me help you plan for that in the future. The program I give you today is not just about this need, but how can we plan for the next one? So that you're
Right.
trying to build a relationship with the merchant, or at least BizFund is.
Mhm.
And that's certainly one of my areas of expertise in the financial planning, relationship building, and so forth, where we look at not just the need today, but how are we helping them to grow their
Right.
business and really make change the program around to match those needs.
Right. I want to pick up on something you brought up earlier about your previous career. Can you speak to me about, because you're talking about communication, relationship management, how what you did before helps inform how you handle this now?
I think for me, that's been my strength I bring to the table in this
Mhm.
industry. I've been in the recruitment space, talent management for probably 25 years before this, global business, global economy, and really making sure to help attract, retain talent because, of course, that generates revenue in a high tech market, because that's where I've been playing forever. So lots of competition to attract that talent. Everyone's calling the same people. Not dissimilar here. We're all calling that same merchant. We all have a similar ideal merchant profile that we're trying to service. So
Mhm.
making sure that you bring a stronger customer service approach to deliver is a massive deal maker. And oftentimes some of the lowest hanging fruit, because the way we treat humans, no matter what business you're in, local or global, has major revenues associated with it. Facts. And it also drives a lot more satisfaction. So, yes, of course, I'm coming to Canada. I want to make a ton of money. I want BizFund to be incredibly successful, but I can only do that if I'm servicing the market I'm in, not just well, but better than well. I want to make sure that we're doing this the best we can. And I think where our success has come so far is being very plugged into the market and asking for feedback, taking the feedback, and really trying to continue to maneuver our product to match market demands. And the only way we're going to know that is by talking to more and more merchants. Our broker partners have been incredibly valuable to that end as well. It takes a village. So really bringing in that market expertise, not just from what we've got internally, but speaking to people, to merchants, to brokers, and building a product that has value. But again, it's not just about the product. It's also about the process
Mhm.
and really trying to elevate that process. And, there's always going to be bumps along the way, but that's where feedback is critical. And that's why we are actively soliciting it. And I think making a lot of progress and having a lot of fun doing it, right?
For sure.
Collaboration is a lot more fun than when you're doing it alone. That's a fact.
Right. Now, folks can go to bizfund.ca and look at sort of your FAQs, information they need. Can they start their application there?
You can absolutely start the application there. Please do. Don't hesitate. We've got our apply now page. It's digital. Go crazy. We've got a ton of frequently asked questions available on our website. I am blogging probably on a weekly basis, just trying to, again, provide information that not only services BizFund, but helps to educate the merchants that are going to be ultimately coming back for our product, and providing you with some information on our website that hopefully you can use, because the truth of the matter is the better business decisions our merchants are making, the more value we can provide, right? It's just, I don't want to be part of a bad decision. I'm here to help people make great decisions that drive their business forward.
Right.
And our performance speaks for itself so far. So I'm really delighted with the results.
That's a really poignant thing to say. I don't want to be part of a bad decision. I'm going to keep that.
Oh, you can keep that one. And it's true. And I would say my whole team stands behind that.
I see.
So yeah, bringing a service-oriented transaction sales background to this business has certainly made my team respond in a way that I call very predictable.
I see.
And that, from person to person, so that when you have an experience at BizFund, it's consistent no matter who you deal with.
That's great. Jodi, thank you so much for taking some time out of your afternoon to speak with me.
No
For Smarter
problem.
Loans, my name's Chris Harhalt. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.